Good evening, I'm John Cluckie, and welcome to the New Hollywood. In 1962, movie legend Judy Garland signed a contract with CBS to create The Judy Garland Show. She hoped it would resurrect her ailing career and lend stability to her personal life. With guest stars such as Peggy Lee, Lena Horne, Barbara Streisand, Ethel Merman, and her daughter Liza Minnelli, the show had hit written all over it. But despite popular and critical acclaim, inside politics and personality clashes led to its cancellation after 26 shows, a blow that would haunt Judy Garland until her premature death in 1969. My guest tonight is author Steven Sanders, who has written a compassionate, accurate, and well-researched book called The Judy Garland Show, Rainbow's End. The Judy Garland Show, Rainbow's End. Hello, Steven.
Hi, John.
Thank you very much for appearing on the
Thank
show.
you.
Why was Judy Garland's career in a slump at that point in her life, and what was her physical and mental health like?
Well, it was in a slump just in the sense where she had done her last movie the year before, and it was a critical success but not a popular success. It was like a go on singing a musical drama. Although in her concert she was sort of still regarded as a very, very big star because she had just done the Carnegie Hall comeback tour. So she wanted to jump into television because it was the one area of her career that she hadn't really succeeded in or dabbled in. She'd only been on television maybe 4 or 5 times before in specials. So this was supposed to be the culmination of the biggest comeback of her career. And as you said, it was supposed to be the biggest success of her career, but it didn't quite work out that way.
And what was she like physically, mentally, before signing with CBS for this?
She was well. Her weight was down. She was in pretty good shape as far as that she had a renewed confidence from the tour, but she still had problems. She had problems in the past with pills and alcohol, and CBS worried at the time whether her temperament and whether her problems would influence her doing a weekly series. But they felt that her marquee value, her name, was worth whatever they had to risk.
Did the thought of TV, did that scare Judy Garland?
Yes, from what I've been told, that she had very mixed emotions about doing a series. She had done 2 live specials in the 50s, which terrified her. She didn't like the final result. For the first one was done in 1955. She was panicked.
Why didn't she like the final result? What was it about it she didn't like?
Well, because she wasn't at her best. Both times she did a special, she had laryngitis because of the fear of performing live. And while it's ironic that while she could perform in concert in front of thousands of people, television, where there just maybe be a few people in the audience relatively, caused her to be seized with panic. So she liked the idea of tape, but in the 50s that wasn't a common practice. There was
film.
Yeah. And there was talk when she was doing the series that it might be done live, but she so disliked the idea they decided to shoot it on videotape.
Ooh. When did the first show air, the first Judy Garland show air, and who were the guests?
For the series, it was taped in June of '63. It was the first one taped with Mickey Rooney, and then the show premiered in September of '63. And then it ran through March of '64.
And the ratings? The first show, I mean, obviously the critics loved it, the audience loved it, the people loved it because everybody adored Judy Garland.
That's right.
What were the Nielsen ratings like? That word she hated the word Nielsen, right?
That's right. She said, who is this Ned Nielsen anyway? Who is he? Who made him in charge of all that? The ratings when the show premiered were quite good. She was opposite Bonanza, which was then the second top-rated show on the air on NBC. It was also in color back then, and the Garland show was in black and white, so that was another drawing power. Also, Bonanza had been on the air for years. So Judy was at a disadvantage because she was premiering opposite a very well-known established show. And so the first few weeks the show did well. The first guest aired was Donald O'Connor. The second show was Barbara Streisand. The show was so good that another show was supposed to be aired. They bumped that show to put on the Barbara Streisand show. And then after a few weeks the ratings started to fall. The critics liked the show, the critics liked Judy, but the format was the constant problem with CBS, which is why they panicked. They wanted to repackage her. In some ways, they wanted her not to be who she was. They wanted her to be accessible to the public. They wanted her to be the girl next door. Well, it's ironic because Judy Garland was a very theatrical, larger-than-life personality.
Yes, she was, yeah.
That's what they bought. But once they had it, They wanted to change her.
Was this feedback from sponsors or nothing?
No, the sponsors loved the show. It was pretty much network interference, CBS, and network panicked. That by the time the series went on the air in September, they'd only been taping for a few months. CBS, without Judy's cooperation, fired George Slaughter and many of her original production staff, brought in Norman Jewis and a whole other flock of people. So even before the show premiered, within the industry, it was already pegged to failure because there was so much backstage turmoil and turnaround.
And that publicity is not good. It's not healthy for anything.
No.
Around the 12th show, you were saying with all this turmoil, it was around the 12th show, some of the CBS executives, they turned on Judy Garland, basically. They dismissed her as a failure. Yeah. They dismissed the show. I mean, there was one executive, what was his name?
Well, Jim Aubrey was the head of CBS at the time.
Why did he dislike her so much?
What people told me, Gary Smith, who was associate producer on the show, that he wanted immediate results. He wanted Judy to knock Bonanza out. And when the ratings didn't match his expectations, after about the third show aired, he, according to these people, turned on the show, dismissed it, and said, she's lousing up my Sunday night schedule. The show is on at 8 o'clock on Sunday nights. It's a mistake. And basically, he thought it was sort of a multi-million-dollar mistake, and then just
How much was she getting for the show, Stephen? How much was Judy Garland making?
Well, her production company produced the show. She was supposedly had cleared about $30,000 a week, which was quite a bit.
After paying guest stars?
After paying all the production expenses of the guests and everything else. But the show ran into so much overtime for different reasons that Judy never quite made what she thought. She basically agreed to do a weekly series for financial security. There's ironic that having been in the business since she was 2 years old and being a big star at MGM, that she never had the kind of financial security that one would expect, especially in these days of a superstar. So Judy was promised that if she did a series, she'd walk away with, say, $20 million. But that was impossible. And so, ironically, a year after the series, she was near bankruptcy. So it didn't at all work out to be what she expected.
When the CBS executives turned on her, and when things were, when pressure was really on around the 12th show, and hirings and firings, how was her emotion? Because she wasn't the most stable person.
Well, it undermined her self-confidence. At the beginning, when she started the series, she was very, although she had misgivings about doing it, she was very excited, she was enthused, and she was there. And then when all this turmoil happened, she would be late occasionally, she wouldn't show up. It was her way of rebelling.
And she cancelled live audiences sometimes, yeah?
No. There got to the point where for the dress rehearsals, there wouldn't be an audience, but there always was an audience. And she never missed a show. Also, none of the backstage turmoil is evident in the shows, and that's one of the remarkable things, even people said at the time. The shows still stand up and they're so good that you don't see any of the problems.
Mel Torme was one of her guests.
Yes.
He was also, became one of her friends, and she helped his career. Then he sued Judy Garland.
Well, he was also on the backstage crew. He wrote much of her special musical material, so he was an employee of the show as well as a guest. He guested on the show 3 times.
But he sued her?
Yes.
Why did he sue her? And then he wrote a book or something after her death which made the family furious. Can you tell us about that?
He sued her directly before she taped the final show in the series because in his mind he was contractually had the right to do more guest appearances on the show. He didn't get them and the show was going off the air. He sued Judy for that. Also the fact that they had problems working together. That what people have said is that Mel's ego got in the way of their working relationship and Judy fired him. And that further caused bad blood between the two of them. And then in 1970, about a year after Judy died, Mel Torme wrote a book about his recollection of working with her on the series. And it was the first book published after Judy's death. It was largely negative, very inaccurate. And the family, her children, and a lot of fans thought not only was the book wrong, but it was sort of exploiting Judy in the fact that it came out right after she died, and it was negative. And there was questions of taste at the time.
Did Liza Minnelli and Lorna Loft, were they quite agreeable to you doing this book? Were they quite favorable? Did you talk to them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I interviewed them for the book, which I was very flattered about because they hadn't been involved in a book written on their mother for about 15 years. They did it because they knew that I wanted to tell the truth, and also they had issues with Mel Torme's book, and I think they felt this was a way of setting the record straight, which is what I wanted to do at the outset. For me, the book came about because I was a reporter at the Hollywood Reporter, and in my work as a television reporter, I met people who worked in the Garland show, and I would talk to them informally, and they all said how wrong Mel Torme's book was and how inaccurate it was. And admiring Judy's work anyway, I thought there seemed to be another story to tell the story about these shows, because the shows are historically important, that the fact that it's the only record that we have and future generations have of Judy as a concert performer. We have all the movies, but it's different. And this is something that is quite wonderful.
And there was nobody like her.
No.
When the Judy Garland show was taken off the air in 1964, why did it take almost, well, 15, 20 years to get back on TV? I mean, where were these shows? What held them up? What was the problem?
Well, there's a lot of legal hassles in the show. There was a question.
And who owns them? Who owns them?
Now Sid Luft, Judy's husband, ex-husband, owns the shows completely, and he fought to get them away through the years from people who claimed to own them. And so now he fought to keep them within the family, and now his production company owns the shows. The shows, coincidentally, are running all this year on the Disney Channel.
On the Disney Channel.
There are 5 of them running that started at the end of last year. And so he has done that. And that's part of the shows sporadically ran in syndication in the 70s and the 80s, but just a few here and there. So I think that's part of it too, that everything had to be straightened out before they could be seen. And I think also there's a newfound appreciation. It's ironic that the shows were dismissed at the time as a failure, and now people are watching them. I mean, Tony Bennett said to me that the reaction was so negative, and now people just adore those shows.
Oh, they're the most wonderful shows. And while we're on that subject, we have a clip of the Judy Garland show with a very young Barbra Streisand. So if we can run the clip with the great Judy Garland and Barbra Streisand in concert.